Alrighty, welcome everybody to Econ Chat's video number 2. And this is the second one in a series designed to hopefully help you understand economics a little bit better and make you a little bit more successful, not only in your class and on the EOC, but of course, perhaps, maybe even in life. So this one's going to be a little short one. It's basically because we're just going to be concerned with just two terms, and those two terms are specialization and voluntary exchange. And of course, these are related to the standards. So let's make sure we go ahead and show you those. All right, so as you can see here, the standard is SSEF3. Basically, it tells you that we need to explain how specialization and voluntary exchange influence buyers and sellers. And you'll notice a couple of sub-points there. A, explain how and why individuals and businesses specialize, and including division of labor. And then, of course, B, explain that both parties gain as a result of voluntary, non-fraudulent exchange. And, of course, the big deal about this is that you're going to see these concepts of specialization and even voluntary exchange bleed into other standards, not just this one. So let's go ahead and give you a textbook definition of specialization. Specialization occurs when an individual, company, or even a country focuses on doing one part of a task and then relies on others to complete that task. So this is key for a number of different reasons, not only because we see it in a bunch of different ways through economics, but the key to specialization, and the reason why it's so important, is that we use it because it allows us to use our resources, which we've already discussed are very scarce. We can use our resources more efficiently. Now, this concept of specialization probably isn't very foreign to you. You've done some specialization in some capacity. You know, one thing you may have been given throughout your academic career is a group project, for example. Now, when you do that project in a group, it's very rare that everybody is actually focusing on the project and everybody is working on the project as a whole. More than likely what happens is that, for example, if you were given a task of having to make a PowerPoint, more than likely what occurs is that one person will do slides 1 through 5, the other people will do slides 6 through 10, and then 11 through 15, and so on and so on. Maybe one person is going to take care of this part of the research, and another person is going to take care of this topic. Or, as sometimes happens in group projects, one person will do it, and the others just kind of sit around. So that's specialization, though. People will focus on one part of the task, and then everybody else will get rid of it, or will complete the task. Now, you also may be familiar with specialization because specialization, of course, occurs in schools. I'm a social studies teacher, for example, and so students come to me for their social studies needs. They have an English teacher that teaches them English. They have somebody that specializes in science that teaches them that, and they have somebody who teaches them math, and so on and so on. Also, specialization occurs because we have administrators, we have secretaries, we have janitorial staff, we have lunchroom people, and so everybody is doing a part of the overall education process in order to give you that educational experience that you need. So that's specialization. So you're probably familiar with specialization in other ways too. You see, specialization can take another form, which we call division of labor. And it essentially means the same thing, but of course what we're doing is we're dividing up work. Now, you've probably witnessed this at McDonald's when you pull up to the window or pull up to the little box and you hear that lovely voice that says, now, in a well-run, efficiently run McDonald's, what that means is that that's that person's job primarily is to take your order and then to submit the order for the rest of the restaurant. And then you're going to have somebody whose job it is to make sure your fries are nice and hot and crispy and salty, and you're going to make sure that somebody has your sandwich all prepared properly. And then, of course, somebody's got to make sure that the drinks are filled, and they're going to hand it to you. Meanwhile, inside, you have somebody whose job it is to keep things possibly stocked up. You have somebody's working a cash register. Of course, you have that all-important manager. And then eventually, somebody has got to clean the bathrooms. But the thing is that it makes more sense to do it that way instead of everybody running around like a chicken with their head cut off and not really having any direction. Instead, if we focus our attention, focus our time and effort on one particular task, it's going to make it so much worthwhile. and it should hopefully therefore make it more efficient. Now, one thing you probably noticed too, and one thing you should pick up, is that one of the negative side effects to division of labor, specialization, is that it really requires everybody to be doing their job, and if they don't, it doesn't work out too well. Then, of course, there are other ways. So take, for example, this assembly line for a Model T, or this assembly line for the Volkswagen Beetle, or this more modern-day assembly line for this automobile. Several different types of automation going on. Now, one thing I want you to also notice, particularly with this last picture, is you can see that specialization has changed over the course of time. Now we don't have as much reliance on human labor doing certain tasks. And this is going to be an important key coming up when we start talking about how the economy has changed and how we have produced things and how that production methods have changed as well. But again, it's important to note that an assembly line is more than likely going to be a very good example of specialization, division of labor, and something that you always need to keep in mind. We're also going to see specialization occur when we begin talking about trade and how countries will focus on making one particular good or several particular goods. And eventually, because we focus on making one particular thing, we'll trade. And of course, we'll also see this when we talk about how businesses will focus their resources. And some will find that it's actually better to focus on one particular product as opposed to focusing on a bunch of different things, where again, our resources won't be efficiently used. Now that brings us to this next term that I promised you we'd have to learn about, and that is voluntary exchange. Now, voluntary exchange sounds like what exactly it is, and what I mean by that is it essentially means we are exchanging things voluntarily. Your textbook definition is voluntary exchange is the act of buyers and sellers freely and willingly engaging in market transactions. So what I want you to basically understand is that voluntary exchange is a big deal. What we have with voluntary exchange are people, societies, governments, all managing to get the goods and services, products that they want and need. And they're able to do so in a way in which it benefits somebody else. This idea of voluntary exchange is all about two sides, the buyer and the seller, both getting something of value to themselves. I'll give you an example. I needed a new phone, right? So I go into the Verizon store and I'm like, hey, Verizon store, can I have a new phone? Here it is. And they said, sure, very smart looking economics teacher, we'll give you a phone. So, why? Well, I went to them because I needed a phone. I had a want. They were more than willing to give me that want because they wanted my money. And they got it. And I got my phone. And we're both pretty happy. So, voluntary exchange, though, is key for an economy. But one thing that's going to be important to understand, particularly as we start moving into studying different types of economies, is that voluntary exchange isn't a universal thing. That doesn't exist everywhere. And so you're going to notice that there are some types of economies in which it flourishes, in which buyers and sellers are happily running around singing kumbaya and each other are getting what they want and what they need. But then you're also going to notice that there's other types of economies, ones in which buyers and sellers don't have as much choice, don't have as much freedom, and don't have as much ability to get what they want and need freely. So that's what we have to look forward to next. I hope this video made sense. If it didn't, you can always ask questions, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless, and we will see you next time.